So today is Tish'a B'Av, the ninth of Av, a mournful day in the Jewish calendar commemorating the destruction of the first and second temples, as well as by extension many other historical tragedies that have befallen us. And this is something I have not observed in the past, but due to some peer pressure from beautiful friends, I'm observing it as a fast day. Also, the current global climate has made it possible to tune in to services for this holiday on Zoom. And last night I listened to the reading of the book of Lamentations at the old Spanish and Portuguese synagogue in New York on their YouTube stream, as well as many of the other traditional elegies sung on this holiday for the destruction of the temple and the fall of Jerusalem. This is an unconventional thing to do, considering this holiday is about the Jewish historical experience, but in recent months, I came across another elegy, Kina in Hebrew, in our national canon, the Hebrew Bible, as it's known to the world, for another nation, another group of people other than the Israelites, our close cultural cousins, the Phoenicians of Tyre, a mercantile seafaring city-state in what's now Lebanon. And it's a beautiful dirge, a beautiful elegy, and reading it in 2020, it's very hard not to think of the United States, mercantile superpower that is clearly falling apart at the seams, and this is something to be mourned, I think. So I just thought I might share this forgotten lamentation for the city-state of Tyre, Tzor in Hebrew, and similar in modern Arabic, that is declaimed in the 27th chapter of the book of Ezekiel, which I feel is a very apt reflection of collective feelings about the unraveling of the society that we find ourselves in this moment of history, which in Ezekiel 27 is portrayed as a great ship in the midst of the ocean. Who was there like Tyre, fortified in the midst of the sea? Mi chetzor keduma betoch hayam. So, in the spirit of that, lamenting not just my people's history, but the situation we find ourselves in today as Americans or America watchers, I thought I would share the Kina, the lamentation or dirge or elegy for Tyre, which is often not associated with this holiday. Ve'ata ven Adam sa al tzor kina. And thou, son of man, take up a lamentation for Tyre. Ve'amarta letzor hayoshevet al mevo'ot yam rochelet ha'amim el iyim rabim Ko amar Adonai Elohim, Tzor at amart, ani kelilat yofi. And say unto Tyre, that dwelleth at the entry of the sea, that is the merchant of the peoples, unto many isles, thus saith the Lord God, Thou, O Tyre, hast said, I am of perfect beauty. Belev yamim gevulaich, bonaich, kalelu yofiech. Thy borders are in the heart of the seas, thy builders have perfected thy beauty. Beroshim misenir banulach, et kol luchotayim, erez milvanon lakahu, la'asot toren alaich. Of cypress trees from Senir they have fashioned all thy planks, they have taken thy cedars from Lebanon to make masts for thee. Alonim mi Bashan asu mishotaich, karshech asu shen, bat ashurim, me'iye kitim. Of the oaks of Bashan have they made thine oars, thy deck have they made of ivory inlaid in larch from the isles of Kittim. Shesh berikma mi Mitzrayim haya mefarsech, lihiyot lach lenes, techelet ve'argaman me'iye Elisha haya mechasech. Of fine linen with richly woven work from Egypt was thy sail, that it might be to thee for an ensign. Blue and purple from the isles of Elisha was thine awning. Yoshvei Tzidon ve'arvad hayu shatim lach, hachamaich tzor hayuvach hemahovlaich. The inhabitants of Sidon and Arvad were thy rowers. Thy wise men, O Tyre, were in thee. They were thy pilots. Ziknei Geval v'hachameha hayuvach, mahazikei bidkech. Kol oniyot hayam umalachehem hayuvach, la'arov ma'aravech. The elders of Byblos and the wise men thereof were in thee thy caulkers. All the ships of the sea with their mariners were in thee to exchange thy merchandise. Paras velud ufut hayu vechelech, anshe milhamtech, magen vechova tiluvach, hema natnu hadarech. Persia and Lydia and Libya were in thine army, thy men of war. They hanged the shield and helmet in thee. They set forth thy comeliness. B'nei Arvad v'helech al homotaich saviv, ve'gamadim b'migdelotaich hayu. Shiltehem tilu al homotaich saviv, hema kalelu yofiech. The men of Arvad and Helech were upon thy walls round about, and the Gamadim were in thy towers. They hanged their shields upon thy walls round about. They have perfected thy beauty. Tarshish sohartech merov kol hon, bechesef barzel bedil ve'oferet natnu izvonaich. Tarshish was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches. With silver, iron, tin, and lead they traded for thy wares. Yavan tuval v'meshech hema rochlaich, v'nefesh adam uchlei nechoshet natnu ma'aravech. Javan, Tubal, and Meshech, they were thy traffickers. They traded the persons of men and vessels of brass for thy merchandise. Mibet togarma susim ufarashim uferadim natnu izvonaich. They of the house of Togarma traded for thy wares with horses and horsemen and mules. B'nei dedan rochlaich iyim rabim sehorat yadech, karnot shen vehavnim heshivu eshkarech. The men of Dedan were thy traffickers, many isles were the mart of thy hand. They brought thee as tribute horns of ivory and ebony. Aram sohartech merov ma'asayich, benofech argaman verikma uvutz, veramot vechadkod natnu be'izvonayich. Aram was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of thy wealth. They traded for thy wares with carbuncles, purple and richly woven work, and fine linen, and coral, and rubies. Yehuda ve'eretz Yisrael hem arochlaich, behite minit ufanag udvash vashemen vatsori natnu ma'aravech. Judah and the land of Israel, they were thy traffickers. They traded for thy merchandise wheat of minit and cannabis and honey and oil and balm. Damesek sohartech berov ma'asayich, merov kolhon, beyen helbon, vetsemer sahar. Damascus was thy merchant for the multitude of thy wealth, by reason of the multitude of all riches, with the wine of Helbon and white wool. Vedan veyavan meuzal be'izvonayich natnu, barzel ashot kida vekane, bema'aravech haya. Vedan and Ionia traded with yarn for thy wares, massive iron, Tish'a and calamus were among thy merchandise. Dedan rochaltech bevigdei hofesh lerichba. Dedan was thy trafficker in precious cloths for riding. Arav v'chol nesiei kedar, hema soharei yadech, becharim ve'elim ve'atudim bam soharaich. Arabia and all the princes of Kedar, they were the merchants of thy hand, in lambs and rams and goats, in these were they thy merchants. Rochlei sheva ve'ra'ma, hema rochlaich, berosh kol bosem, uvchol even yekara vezahav natnu izvonaich. The traffickers of Sheba and Ra'amah, they were thy traffickers. They traded for thy wares with chief of all spices, and with all precious stones and gold. Haran v'chane va'eden rochlei sheva, Ashur kilmad rochaltech. Haran and Kane and Eden, the traffickers of Sheba, Ashur, was as thine apprentice in traffic. Hema rochlaich be'machlulim, biglomei techelet verikma, uvginzei beromim, v'havalim havushim, va'aruzim be'marchultech. These were thy traffickers in gorgeous fabrics, in wrappings of blue and richly woven work, and in chests of rich apparel, bound with cords and cedar-lined, among thy merchandise. Oniot Tarshish sharotaich ma'aravech, vatimal'i vetichbedi me'od belev yamim. The ships of Tarshish brought thee tribute for thy merchandise, so wast thou replenished and made very heavy in the heart of the seas. B'maim rabim hevi'uch hashatim otach, ruach hakadim shevarech belev yamim. Thy rowers have brought thee into great waters. The east wind hath broken thee in the heart of the seas. Honech ve'izvonaich ma'aravech malachaich ve'hovlaich mahazikei bidkech ve'orvei ma'aravech ve'kol anshei milhamtech asher bach uvchol kehalech asher betochech yiplu belev yamim beyom mapaltech. Thy riches and thy wares, thy merchandise, thy mariners and thy pilots, thy caulkers and the exchangers of thy merchandise, and all thy men of war that are in thee, with all thy company which is in the midst of thee, shall fall into the heart of the seas in the day of thy ruin. Lekol za'akat hovlaich yir'ashu megoroshot. At the sound of thy cry of thy pilots, the waves shall shake. V'yardu me'oniotehem kol tofsei mashot malachim kol hovlei hayam el haaretz ya'amodu. And all that handle the oar, the mariners, and all the pilots of the sea, shall come down from their ships, they shall stand upon the land. V'hishmi'u alayich v'kolam, v'yiz'aku mara, v'ya'alu afar al roshehem, ba'efer yitpalashu, and shall cause their voice to be heard over thee, and shall cry bitterly, and shall cast up dust upon their heads. They shall roll themselves in the ashes. V'hikrihu elaich karha, v'hagru sakim, uvachu elaich bemar nefesh misped mar. And they shall make themselves utterly bald for thee, and gird them with sackcloth, and they shall weep for thee in bitterness of soul, with bitter lamentation. V'nas'u elaich benehem kina, v'konenu alayich, mi chetzor keduma betoch hayam. And in their wailing they shall take up a lamentation for thee, and lament over thee. Who was there like Tyre, fortified in the midst of the sea? V'tzet ezvonaich miyamim, hisbat amim rabim, berov honaich um'aravaich, ha'eshart malchei aretz. When thy wares came forth out of the seas, thou didst fill many peoples. With the multitude of thy riches and of thy merchandise didst thou enrich the kings of the earth. Et nishberet miyamim, b'ma'amakei mayim, ma'aravech v'chol kehalech, b'tochech nafalu. Now that thou art broken by the seas in the depths of the waters, and thy merchandise and all thy company are fallen in the midst of thee. Kol yoshvei ha'iyim shamemu alayich, umalchehem sa'aru sa'ar, ra'amu panim. And all the inhabitants of the isles are appalled at thee, and their kings are horribly afraid. They are troubled in their countenance. Soharim ba'amim sharku alayich, balahot hayit ve'enech ad olam. The merchants among the peoples hiss at thee, thou art become a terror, and never shalt be any more. This is all very painful. All great powers come to an end, but most people don't live to experience that inflection point. So, my hope for Tish'a B'Av is that to the extent that this is inevitable, and to the extent that there is some range of possibilities for its trajectory and its speed, I'm hoping for a soft landing. I'm hoping for gentleness. This is not an expression of naivete about the suffering that people have experienced in this country since its beginning. But to gloat and hope for this fall is to hope for the suffering of everyone in this country, most vulnerable among them, most subject to it among them, the people who have always been first to bear the brunt of the suffering. So I share the Hebrew prophet Ezekiel's lamentation over Tyre, which was like a great fortress fortified in the sea, like that boat up there, like all of modernity, like the American Empire. And I couple it with my awareness of the destruction of my people's temples. And so I wish everyone who's fasting and reflecting a meaningful rest of their fast and reflection, and a call toward deeper engagement with this beautiful treasury of endlessly relevant texts, lamentations, ululations, songs of praise, that I'm so proud that my ancestors composed. I'm so proud that we have shared with the world. Tzom Kal.